I may have to declare this time the Month of Suse because they just keep making news. In this case, they have two articles in the past week that I want to take a look at, and I also want to try to put these articles in perspective with some of the stuff we saw last month. Let's start with the first article, and that is Suse returning to being a private company. So as you can see here directly from the Suse website, EQT Private Equity announces voluntary public purchase offer intention to delist Suse. You can read all of this legal stuff. I will have the link down in the description if you want to. But ultimately, this is saying that Suse will no longer be listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. It will no longer be something that is publicly traded. And maybe this is common, but one thing I noticed down here at the very bottom, there is no obligation for shareholders to accept the offer, which is they're talking about how they're going to pay so much per share in Suse. And private equity does not intend to pursue a squeeze out. Therefore, shareholders who wish to stay invested in Suse in a private setting may do so. That's a little different. I don't know what a private investment like that actually gets you. Technically, in a publicly traded company, that would potentially give you voting power on decisions if you had enough stock. But in this case, it really doesn't particularly matter because I believe one kind of entity holds 79% of the shares of Suse, as seen here. This makes me wonder what is next for Suse. And while it may not necessarily be the same, it also kind of strikes me like the Dell deal to go private. If you're not familiar with that, this was about 10 years ago now. It was a much bigger deal. It was $24.4 billion at the time. I believe they went public again 5 years later in 2018. There was a rumor that they're going private again, I think last year, speculation at least. But I think as of 2021, they were saying that's not in the plans. This was a very different situation because Dell was having major trouble and they really needed to change a lot. And that is what they essentially did in the 5 years where they were a private company. I'm not super familiar with Suse's financials or anything like that, but I don't think they are in the same kind of boat that Dell was at the time. But it is interesting to see that and then also see a story like this come out just last week. All right, and so this one was CIQ, Oracle, and Suse create Open Enterprise Linux Association for a collaborative and open future. And the high-level story here is that this is a trade association that is going to bring together open source enterprise Linux community. And the key here is source code that organizations can use to build distributions compatible with RHEL. I'm curious how much this means that Oracle and Suse are actually going to cooperate. If you're not familiar with CIQ, by the way, CIQ is the group that we saw last video, or a few videos ago, where ultimately Suse is working with CIQ on their enterprise, or kind of RHEL fork. And CIQ is the support group that handles Rocky Linux support. This is just another interesting one to me. I'm curious how this actually works and what the mechanics are going to be, but it's just interesting timing that this is literally a week ago and just about a month after the previous story with CIQ and Rocky Linux team and Suse teaming up. I will be curious what this means for a RHEL compatible distribution. I'll be curious what this means for Red Hat itself and IBM, because this sounds like this could introduce a lot more competitors in that space. But this story was a bit of a wild one when I heard it, because, I mean, it's just, again, you have Suse and Oracle teaming up now. It's just made a very interesting situation. I expect it'll be years before this story really means anything, but still, it's interesting to see how this could shape the landscape. What will happen with Red Hat? What will happen with RHEL? Will, more companies start creating RHEL competitors that they want to try to support? That'll all have to, we'll have to see how that turns out. But it's really interesting to me that the company going private, Suse going private, happens like a week after this particular story about them teaming up with Oracle and CIQ. And that the team up with Oracle and CIQ comes about a month after the original announcement of a fork of RHEL by Suse. I'm also curious what this means overall for Suse. Like, I wonder what kind of the goal here is when it comes to changing to a private company. What is What is that going to mean for SUSE? Is that going to change anything in the short term, the long term? Is that something where they're going to be able to grow and then potentially go public again? Or is it something where they want to stay a private company? Most companies' goals are generally to go public. Like, that is a big thing because that is often how they grow a lot from there. So it's interesting to see SUSE go private. What are your thoughts on them going private? What are you thinking about this kind of team up with them, Oracle, and CIQ? What do you think this means for Red Hat? Feel free to sound off on that or anything else below in the comments. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and I will see you next time.